Hi, this is John Cohen. Welcome to another episode of Hypothetically Speaking. In this episode of Hypothetically Speaking, I'm really pleased to be joined by Dr. Dave Collum. Dr. Dave Collum is at Cornell University, and he and I connected over Twitter. Dr. Collum, thank you so much for joining me today here on Hypothetically Speaking. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I don't normally get to talk to people who are up to speed on some of the issues that we're likely to hit.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you and I connected on Twitter, I guess, because I did a podcast. I was a guest on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I guess you saw that and got wind of my work. Is that how we connected? Is that right?
Yeah, I was in the middle of a podcast on the same podcast with Mike Ferris, and I went into what I often do is a slight rant about things like Las Vegas shootings being from head to toe wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I do it just to sort of shock the audience into waking up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then he mentioned your name, and so I went and ferreted you out and looked around and said, "Oh, interesting."
I gotcha. Well, let me tell the audience a little bit about you, so they understand your background. You got your bachelor's degree at Cornell University, but then you went to Columbia, and you got two different masters at Columbia, and then went and got a PhD, and then decided to go, or I don't know if you decided or they decided for you to go back to Cornell, and you are the Betty Miller Professor of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Cornell University. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, especially since it was just drug, sex, rock and roll in high school. So there was some rehab required to get through that story. Yeah.
Tell us about Betty Miller. What is the Betty Miller Professor, and explain that to the audience, if you will.
Well, so universities have endowed chairs. Betty Miller is the wife of one of my former colleagues who was on the Manhattan Project and made a bunch of Teflon-like products and stuff and made some serious money. And so they endow a chair. So for going rate probably about $5 million in the endowment now, you can name a chair, and that pays my salary.
Gotcha.
And so it's a way of slowly but surely accruing the fully endowment of the payroll of there's probably 500 endowed chairs at Cornell. So.
And is most of your work at the university research, or is most of your work teaching? What is most of the stuff that you're doing there?
Well, you kind of teach for your dinner, and your job is actually research, and so you're hired to be famous, right? Bottom line, you're hired to score, to make Cornell an illustrious place, and being a good teacher is important, but that's not what gets you the job.
Getting published.
And it is getting published, and ideally really getting famous, right? And being sort of top of your field, whatever that is. And so you scour the globe to find young punks coming out of PhDs or postdocs.
Right.
And you literally try to find the best person in the world, if you can, in that field that year at least. And then you hire them, and then they go through assistant professorship. And if they get tenure, then they get to stay. And most of my colleagues, at least, work very hard, their entire career. So it's not the image of the faculty member sitting around, choking the chicken is not valid, and the sciences is not. They work very, very hard.
Right.
The humanists might be loafing half the time. I don't know. I really don't know at all, actually.
Yeah. But I mean, your field is so specialized. I mean, you're not just doing organic chemistry, you're doing organometallic chemistry, you're doing organolithium, organosodium. I mean, you're on an edge of organic chemistry that not many people can skate on. Is that true?
Well, it's true, but it's also true that you're supposed to be on an edge somewhere anyway. So, so the perfect edge. So my digital footprint has as a foundation mostly finance and markets. So somehow I got into finance and markets and showed some sort of odd aptitude for it. Don't quite know what it was, but so, I go to investment conferences and give talks and stuff. And I do about 50 podcasts a year, probably. I'm a big believer that regression of the mean is a force of nature. I got into an argument with someone say, the markets can just keep going up. I said, no, they can't. 20% of the S&P can't pay their interest payments with their cash flow. These are the 500 biggest companies in the United States. The overarching theory that covers all these concerns of ours is that someone's trying to destroy us.
Do you believe that?
Well, let me ask you this. Are we trying to destroy Putin? I think the S&P is going to unwind sub 2000.
There's people right now who are going to hear you say that, and they're going to go shut their computer and go for a walk outside.
Well, what do you disagree with? I went back into commodities and resources in December of 2020. And I was first triggered by Exxon getting kicked out of the Dow. And I said, oh boy, that's a buy signal right there. And then the second important thing was when Jesse Felder pointed out that the S&P was 2% energy and it used to be 16. I said, oh, that's another buy signal. Okay. And they're almost always tied to finance in some way. As an organolithium chemist, it turns out that lithium is the most important metal in organic chemistry. So it sounds like an edge, right? And it is an edge. It's very complicated. It was extraordinarily complicated. There are people who thought I'd fail going in that direction. Mm-hmm. Maybe because they didn't think people would care. Turns out I have huge pharma connections now because they care. Mm-hmm. They use lithium on gigaton scales, and so and we kind of have the market cornered in that there's very few of us out there who do this, and I would say the way I do it, there's almost none.
But the Grignard reagent has a nucleophilic carbon. And so that's why it does what it does in chemical reactions. Now, it's important to understand that in order to make the Grignard reagent, you need to use an ether solvent. And commonly, the ether could be diethyl ether, or it could be THF, tetrahydrofuran.
And there might be someone listening who's in my field going, well, I do it, but it's not the way we do it, right? Right. And so the pharma connection turned out to be a real winner, and so that we made a lot of money for Pfizer and Merck and these guys for various ways, and so it's on the edge, but the edge is where we're supposed to be working. So
it's fascinating, and yet the audience is probably thinking that we're going to start talking about various viruses and Nerimididase, and but we're not. You were interested in the Vegas shooting, and so this is how we connected. And between the coffee and a mic, and I guess I did another podcast a week or two ago on Red Pill News with Zach Payne, and I did another one a few weeks earlier with Dustin Stockton, and basically just kind of talked through the event. And just that seemed to open up a lot of eyes for the audience, people who weren't aware of various aspects. So I'd love to hear your take on it, and sort of, what triggered your cognitive dissonance, and how early on with this Vegas shooting, what was it about it that you said, no, this isn't right? And how soon was that? How early?
Well, so you said something in one of your podcasts. You said something about, maybe it was one with Mike. You said something about how you had gone down a previous rabbit hole. This was not something about not being your first. And that was really my story. So you go down rabbit holes sort of one at a time until you realize the world is just rabbit holes. And so my first rabbit hole was when I was 18 years old, when I went to a seminar by Mark Lane, who was Oswald's lawyer. And I certainly wasn't ready to handle what Mark Lane had to say. But he basically, what I remember vividly is that he was an elite lawyer. He was sort of a Johnny Cochran type of his era. And he said Oswald had nothing to do with the killing of Kennedy. And he said that he was hired by the Kennedys to defend Oswald. And that was rather extraordinary to me. And so that kind of put just a little bug up there. I tend to be very contrarian. So I tend to look for the story beneath the story, a Michael Lewis kind of approach, maybe.
Right.
And I don't want to write about stuff that everyone's writing about. And so when it gets to be a crowded field, I said, okay, you guys keep writing. I'm moving on. I write, starting around 2007, I started writing a summary of the year on a finance website. And it started out as here's how my year went. And then I made a few observations about where I thought the world was maybe heading. And then one year it kind of went viral, escaped the containment field. And all of a sudden, instead of being 250 clicks from 250 people, all of whom I knew, I got 3,000. And so somehow it got outside. And then the next year it got bigger. And then in 2009, I wrote a big one. I said, okay, I'm going to take this serious. I've been investing for 30 years. I wrote a pretty big one, and it kind of went bananas. And I found myself in demand. So ever since then, I've written an annual review, and it's a story of finance. It's a story of human folly. So for me, I write about whatever happened that year that catches my eye. So anything like Vegas would have caught it no matter what.
Right.
But what was the eye catcher for Vegas? And you and I think, looking at it sort of in some sense, if I'm correct, possibly at different layers of the same onion. I get a sense that, like, you focused a lot on the helicopters. Was it Mohammed bin Salman? Is he that have trouble keeping these guys straight? Mm-hmm. Which I picked up relatively late, so that was not on my radar. So what happened is I was watching the Vegas shooting videos with morbid curiosity, sort of like the we're all glued to 9/11 at the time, right? Mm-hmm. Which I'm a truther too at this point, right? And I'm watching this video, and up pops a guy named Mike Kronk. And I wouldn't have remembered it. And he tells a story, and it's right there. It's still dark. There's still a crowd. The newscasters have shown up, and they're trying to get the story. And Mike seems notably unpassionate, right? I would expect the guy's eyes to be popping out like a cartoon character, mm-hmm. and shook up, and he seemed remarkably calm, mm-hmm. and he talked about his friend getting shot 3 times in the chest, mm-hmm. which I later found out from a guy named I can't remember his name now, a marksman who said that's not possible because the spray would be far too great. So you wouldn't have gotten 3 from that distance, right? But what caught my eye immediately was Mike Kronk said his friend put his fingers in his own bullet holes to stop the bleeding. Mm-hmm. I said, now you're lying. Why are you lying? Right? So I was familiar with lying Wall Street's filled with liars, right? So right away I said, holy shit, why is this guy saying this?
Matt, I believe you're there with Mike Kronk, who you were speaking with earlier.
That's right. Mike Kronk, we found him sitting actually right here on the curb, and he wasn't wearing a shirt because he had used it to stanch the blood of one of his friends, and he was sitting there with his head in his hands, and there's still blood on his hands. And he had been through one of the most harrowing experiences I've ever heard, and we just started talking to him. And Mike, maybe you can just tell me your story. I mean, where were you tonight?
We were at the Route 91 concert, and been there all day waiting for Jason Aldean, and it's real surreal, actually. You know, everybody's having a good time, and then all of a sudden you hear some popping going on, and I don't think anybody really understood what it was. And then my buddy, after a little bit of popping, my buddy's like, I got hit. So my buddy got shot 3 times, and then everybody knew there was a shooter. So everybody pretty much dove on top of each other, got down. It was a lot of chaos, people trampling each other and, you know, trying to get away. And it seemed like forever, you know, but we were just trying to take care of the people that are wounded. You know, there were a lot of people that were really selfless and actually stayed with people.
Just gonna hold it closer to you, Mike. Now you're an avid hunter, and so you recognized immediately that this was not just gunfire, but it was automatic gunfire coming in rapid bursts.
Yeah, it was very obvious. Whoever was shooting it was a fully automatic, and they had to reload. So whether there's one person or two, but there was a break between clips being, you know, shot out.
Now you describe it rather casually, but you know, your best friend, you're here on your 48th birthday trip, you're a retired teacher, and you came with your best friend, and he took 3 bullets to the chest, as close as I am to you right now.
True. It was hard. You know, I saw him there, and I was like, I wasn't going to leave him, so we had to, you know, there was an EMT there. Somebody was an EMT. There was lots of, you know, awesome ex-military people that were trained, so we got him compressed, and that's, you know, kept compression on his chest. He actually put his finger in the hole, you know, so we, you know, don't move your finger, and we could keep the compression on, and probably stayed like that for at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes before we finally made a decision that we needed to get him over the fence so we get him under the stage, so at least we knew we were safe dealing with him. And
so you and 3 other guys had to physically haul him over a fence in order to get him under the stage and to a protected area.
Yeah, we got him over and then slid him under the stage, and we were under there, and another awesome lady came over and helped compress, and so there's, you know, I am no hero, but there is tons of heroes out there there's a lot of heroes out there.
It's pretty astonishing to think that you guys were physically plugging his bullet wounds with your fingers.
Yeah, Rob, with my friend Rob, he had his finger in the hole. He's like, don't take it out. He's like, leave your finger there, we'll compress over the top of it. So we just had, you know, shirts and whatever we could, you know.
And then you couldn't get him out. There was no ambulance there because there was still an active shooting situation.
Correct.
And how did you manage to get him out?
Well, there was a couple, I want to say they're EMT, first responders, and we got him out from under the stage and ran him around the back, and we got him on a cart, and we drove around the side where there was a triage center, and one of the cops, we were going to throw him in his car, but then something happened where he had to go, and we ended up loading up a pickup truck, a civilian pickup truck with 4 wounded people to get him, but we got turned around.
4 wounded people in that pickup truck,
back of the truck,
as well as you guys?
Yes. Yeah, there was 1 person with each person, so 8 of us in the back of a pickup, and we got turned around, so we couldn't go, and then we ended up right back here on this street, right where those cop cars are, and got him in an ambulance, and that's where one young man passed away, you know, as we were carrying him out of the...
One of the guys you were with actually died.
It was somebody I did not know, but...
Somebody in the truck with you?
Yes, we had him in the ambulance, and we were loading him in the ambulance, and the guy said, you know, let's set him down here, and so I set him down with myself, and the young man passed away.
He literally died in your arms?
He did. It's been a tough night.
For so many people here.
So many people died and are wounded. And it's very sad.
Sorry I had to experience that. I must just have been.
Me too. But I'm glad some people are safe, and you know, it's a terrible tragedy. I mean, I don't know what other words you can use for it.
We got a piece of good news a few minutes ago, though. Your friend Rob, the one who was shot 3 times, including bullets to the chest, his daughter texted you.
Yep.
What'd she say?
He said, "Hey, Dad talked to us, said he's going to be okay." So it took a load off me, but still, you know, so many other people. I mean, it could have been me. I was right next to my buddy. That could have been me that got shot. So, you know, very thankful right now.
Did you actually hear the bullets hit? Did you hear?
You know, you actually heard some of the bullets hit the fencing. Yeah, it's aluminum, and that's how that's pretty much how we kind of knew this was not firecrackers. And then my buddy got shot, obviously, but we did hear some hit the aluminum fencing.
I mean, you're incredibly strong. You're standing through this. You're an avid hunter. You've been in situations that are chaotic and maybe not similar to this, but difficult. But you know, it's just impressive how you've withstood all of this.
I try to keep your head, you know, and do what you can. I mean, like I said, there's tons of people that were true heroes tonight.
And George, we've talked a lot about luck as well tonight, and Mike's girlfriend actually fell ill earlier today, and so she decided to stay in the hotel. Or she could have been along with you guys too.
Yeah, she was. She actually came to the concert and left like about an hour in. It was too hot, you know. So I'm very thankful that she got sick, to be honest. Thankful that she got sick, to be honest. Thankful that she got sick, to be honest. Thankful that she got sick, to be honest.
And so as YouTube does, he finishes the interview and he talks about putting him on a cart and wheeling him off to the hospital and et cetera, et cetera. YouTube rolled over 15 seconds later to the next video, new network, same guy. So there's 20,000 people at this concert, but they interview Mike Kronk again. Mm-hmm. And he tells the story again, and it changes a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it would be trivial, but I'm going, but your story changed. And it was, he put him on the back of a truck. And I said, why'd you lie again, Mike? Right. And so then 15-second rollover, and there's Mike Kronk again. Now he's looking a little more emotional, right? He's getting that part down. And so I searched out Mike Kronk quite a bit because I said, okay, this is what, I'm not even sure I knew they were called that at the time, the crisis actors. Mm-hmm. And I can even tell a benign story about why crisis actors exist. You could say, well, they ship some guy there to calm everyone the hell down and mm-hmm. to give news something to work with. It's not just pandemonium. I don't know. But so I was reading about, I started seeing videos of course, I saw all the shooting videos, right? Mm-hmm. And none of them made sense because there were guns going off everywhere. And there's taxi cab drivers saying there's shooters over here. You got cops saying there's shooters over there. Mm-hmm. And so nothing was adding up. You could hear multiple weapons with the naked ear. And then, audio guys pulled all the shooters apart and said, look here, there are at least 3 shooters in this audio right here. Mm-hmm. Some guy claimed to triangulate in and show where the shooters were coming from. But I picked up another video of Mike Kronk a couple days later. And I've been reading about the wounded. And I watch videos. There'd be some teenage girl there and she's in the hospital and she's sitting on a chair in a gown and she'd been shot in the leg and she's talking about the thing. But then I'm picking up trauma surgeons saying these weapons do a special kind of damage to the human body. And so I was getting this conflicting view of people talking about getting shot and then mm-hmm. And then surgeons saying, it takes 10 surgeries to repair one of these when you get whacked by them, right? That sort of mm-hmm. thing. Mm-hmm. So the trauma surgeons were picking up on a problem. Mm-hmm. And then Mike Kronk and a film crew goes in to visit his friend. And I'm familiar with hospitals because my wife has had 60 surgeries, so I kind of know the protocols. Mm-hmm. And Mike goes in to talk to his friend, and there's his friend with a nose cannula, mm-hmm. and they're chatting. And I'm going, what do you got your fingers in the bullet holes so that you don't have air whizzing out of your chest? I mean, what's going on here? And then I noticed, so he had no tubes out any orifice, right? And you and I'm sure, would agree that if a guy had been shot 3 times with an AR-15 in the chest, first of all, no film crew would get near him. Second of all, he'd be in the ICU. Third of all, the only way you'd know he's alive is you'd hear beeping that tells you there are vital signs that have not yet been lost, right? And here he is chatting with his buddy, and then the YouTube started disappearing like crazy. That's the other hint. And then I noticed that the screen, which has all the pulse ox and everything on it, wasn't plugged in. So I started digging into Mike Kronk, and he was basically a hick from Alaska. And all I could find was a picture of Mike with an elk, holding the antlers and looking like a tough guy. And he was just a bearded Alaskan hick. The reason I mention that is because it turns out one of the other key players, as you know, is Sheriff Lombardo, who said it absolutely had to be multiple shooters. And by the next day said it was a single shooter. That turns out to be a property of all the mass shootings, the mass killings where the guy on the street, right on the spot, tells the story of multiple shooters. By the next day, it's one drug-addled teenager.
Yes, no.
You guys ready to go? Thumbs up? Where you going?
Here, Greg. All right, can you hear me okay? Well, good evening. Obviously, I'm Sheriff Joe Lombardo from Clark County, and I'm here to talk to you about the tragic event that's taken place and is currently taking place at the Mandalay Bay out on the Las Vegas Boulevard South. We experienced an active shooter situation approximately 10:08 p.m. tonight, this evening. We had calls come into dispatch of multiple shots being fired from the direction of the Mandalay Bay towards the Route 91 concert that was taking place on the east side of Las Vegas Boulevard. Through investigation and response, we determined there was a shooter on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Officers responded to that location and engaged the suspect at that location. He is dead currently. He has been identified. He is a local resident. I will not release his name at this time, but we are interested in a companion that is traveling with him, and her name is, and I will provide you the name, so please be accurate on this, is Mary Lou Danley, Marilou, last name spelled Danley. She is a Asian female, approximately 4 foot 11, weight of 111 pounds. We have not located her at this time, and we are interested in talking to her for follow-up. 2 vehicles we're interested in locating, and we need your assistance with that. We have a Hyundai Tucson with Nevada plate 114 Baker 40B40, and a Chrysler Pacifica Touring Nevada plate 19D401. These are the plates registered to the suspect that we located at the Mandalay Bay. So there's a couple of things that need to occur at this time. Additionally, anybody that may have cell phone video or any type of video associated with this event that would be a benefit to the investigation, please respond to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department headquarters at 400 South Martin Luther King, and we will take custody of that video. So if you have it, you evaluate it, and you think it would be a benefit, please bring that down to the headquarters. Standing with me is Special Agent in charge of the FBI, Aaron Rouse. He is assisting with the investigation, which is ongoing. And then we have Fire Chief Greg Castle from Clark County Fire, and they are assisting with all the victims. Now, as far as number of victims, I cannot give you an accurate number at this point. We have well in the excess of 100 plus injured and excess of 20 plus that have died at this point. So we will get those numbers to you accurately as soon as we can. But please bear with us. This is an ongoing investigation. But we are comfortable that the primary aggressor in this event has expired or passed away and is no longer a threat. There's been multiple phone calls and accusations or conjecture coming through social media that there's multiple shooters at other resorts. That has been proven to be false. Additionally, there's been accusations or beliefs there's some explosives going off. That is also false. The only explosive contained in this event was from our SWAT team breaching the room. So please, we are pretty confident that there is no longer a threat other than we are attempting to locate the person of interest.
Was this an act of terrorism?
No, not at this point. We believe it's a local individual. He resides here locally. I'm not at liberty to give you his place of residence yet because it's an ongoing investigation. We don't know what his belief system was at this time. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. No, we have no idea at this point. It's an ongoing investigation. As you can imagine, it just happened. So please bear with us.
And it always reduces down to that. And I was at somewhat of a disbeliever of the MK Ultra story. And then actually, I knew there was something to it, but I read a lot about it this year, and it turns out to be enormous, right? It turns out to be enormous and fully documented. And MK Ultra was the CIA trying to figure out how to drug people into doing shit that they normally wouldn't do. And the claim is they wrapped it up after the Church Commission, and it didn't work. And I'm sitting there going, I don't think they wrapped it up, and I don't think it failed. And so MK Ultra has been tied to shooters. Stephen Kinzer wrote a book on this, and he's pretty credible, I think. They've been tied to Manson. They've been tied to Jack Ruby killing Oswald. They've been tied to the Oklahoma City bomber. They've been tied to Ted Kaczynski. And I actually think Kaczynski wasn't a failure of the program. I think he was an experiment. I think these are all laboratory experiments. And so that's kind of how I got into the Vegas shooting. And then, as you know, I know I'm telling the high priest, but as you know, even famous people picked up. David French, Tucker Carlson, Ann Coulter were all calling baloney on it and saying there's something so wrong with this story. And how a guy got 23 sophisticated killing machines that were not the kind you could buy from Walmart into his hotel room. Suppose we were there for 3 or 4 days, and Steve Wynn said there's no chance you'd let a guy could have weapons in his room for 3 or 4 days because they would never leave a hotel room unattended. You can put do not disturb all you want. They're going to peek in that room because, rotting carcasses are not good for business. And so they will not let a room sit attended and unchecked on for 4 days. And from all the footage, it was clear that there were shooters everywhere. And then it had all the pieces that were strangely unexplainable, like after the shooting, out of 20,000 people, 9 more people died mysteriously. During the shooting, there was that crazy woman walking around the crowd saying, "You're all going to die in 45 minutes." And so here's where you and I we don't quite connect yet. And that is, so you've got this Saudi assassination plot, which I think is a good one. And I think I had missed the helicopter story until after. So it occurred, October? So I wrote about it in my annual review. So I had from sometime in October till December to get the story together as one of 25 chapters. So you can imagine how furiously I was trying to piece it together. But the mess I'm describing is somewhat it doesn't match up well with the Saudi assassination because the ground level mess seems too complicated for a Saudi assassination from the helicopters. I don't know how to piece the two together.
Well, why don't we start at the beginning, and I'll kind of walk you through the process that I went through and what I discovered in sequence, because what I understand about it now is the result of 18 months, 24 months of disclosures by the LVMPD. In other words, not all the evidence was made available on day one.
Oh, I know. They hid all like crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of the body cam footage didn't come out till much, much later. And in the early
So
days,
is the body cam footage in the Route 91 documentary, is that capture most of the body cam footage, or is that even inadequate?
No, that doesn't even come close. So the Route 91 documentary that Mindy put together is sort of like a synopsis, and in a weird way, it's almost like a 2 hour and 15-minute preview of the content on my channel. And she used a lot of, a lot of my work there. Like there's a video.
Did I see your face in her documentary? I think I did.
Yeah, I
a brief cameo.
Yeah, for about a second, I'm interviewing somebody. Yeah. I'm interviewing a guy who was attending a hockey game, the Sharks game, and when he and his wife came out of the game, they went to the M&M candy store on Las Vegas Boulevard. And when they were coming in or coming out of the candy store, he says there's a Black Hawk helicopter flying down Las Vegas Boulevard. And he said, and the way I knew it was a Black Hawk is because they have these Lexan transparent panels right below the pilot's feet, so the pilot can see the ground. And he said,
"Oh, interesting."
And he said, so it was like I could see the glow of the cockpit through the the floor. Yeah. And he said, so I knew it was a Black Hawk. It flew right over us on Las Vegas Boulevard.
8:51 we walked out of the M&M store. Mm-hmm. We're standing I guess in front of the ABC store across the street from the T-Mobile Arena, which was to our left. Mm-hmm. And our rental car was parked in the parking garage behind the T-Mobile Arena. I want to say it's to the left of the Monte Carlo. So we're standing at the crosswalk and we're waiting, and it seemed like the crosswalk was taking forever to change. Mm-hmm. Coming from my right is a black helicopter, a Huey helicopter. What made it distinguishable was the fact that the helicopter had two window plates underneath the nose of the helicopter, mm-hmm. where you can see part of the framing of the helicopter. It had a back door on the right side that was fully open with a black curtain drawn. And the curtain was open enough to where I could see the light green luminescence of the instrument panel of the helicopter. I could not see any bodies in it. I couldn't see anything other than that color, and then the passenger seat of the helicopter. But it flew low enough that I could see that there was a black curtain, the door was open, and the color of the instrument panel. It flew right over our heads. As soon as it got in front of Mandalay Bay, it kind of rose up in altitude, and that's when we heard the gunshots. I turned to my left immediately, looked up at the helicopter, and it was just like, what the hell? That was automatic gunfire. I'm thinking to myself, my girlfriend responds to me. She goes, babe, did you hear that helicopter? And I go, what about that helicopter? She says, it sounded funny. And I go, what do you mean it sounded funny? She goes, it just sounded weird. I go, that wasn't the helicopter. That was automatic gunfire. And then as we're talking about it, I turn my head to my left again, and I look at the helicopter, and I see it circle around Mandalay Bay towards the back end of it, and there's no gunshots. As soon as it comes back to the front of Mandalay Bay, you hear the brrr again, and then it flies off again behind it.
Where were you guys standing as you're seeing this? So you said you saw it kind of fly over your head. Is that right? It like came from behind you and then was heading southbound. Is that right? Did I get that right?
It came from our right, from our right side down the strip.
He said, I've never seen anything like that. And it's nighttime, and I'm looking through the floor, and I see the instrumentation through the floor of the helicopter. Like, he said, that's how low it was. So that's one eyewitness. Well, it turns out that over the course of the investigation, I ended up meeting a number of eyewitnesses who came forward. The first one who came forward is a guy we call the dog walking guy. And the interesting thing about him was he was watching this unfold from just far enough away to not be able to hear the gunfire.
Interesting.
So just far enough away to see what's happening. And he walks his dogs every night at the same place at the same time. 10 o'clock.
It's a timestamp.
And this guy baselined air traffic in the area unknowingly, like wax on, wax off Mr. Miyagi, by walking his dogs the same time every night for years.
So he would know when something was wrong.
And when you see the interview with him, he is shaken, and he's like, dude, this jet plane just banks and turns like...
Drove my dogs over to this area, and I got out of the car about 10:04. And as I was getting out of the car, I looked, down this way to the east, and I saw a plane make this bank to the south. I mean, I've never seen a turn like this before. It banked really sharply to the south, like a car would swerve to avoid a person or something. That dramatic a turn. And I thought, God, that was strange. I thought maybe it was a plane crash or something. And then almost simultaneously, all the emergency vehicle sirens started coming up, from everywhere. You don't really realize how many they are until they all turn on the lights and start heading a certain direction. And that's what happened. I mean, everyone you can imagine just started heading east. And I was thinking, oh my God, there's a plane crash, right? What's going on? And then I looked over to, the dogs got out and they ran out, and I was watching them, and, Mandalay Bay was in sight. And I saw these helicopters on the top of Mandalay Bay. Actually, I gave them a look when I saw it when I first got out of the car and I saw the plane. I looked over there and I didn't see the helicopters. And the next time I looked over, they were there.
It's avoiding an incoming something. He said, I've never seen anything like it. And then he describes the Maverick Tour Helicopters Brigade. They sent up a sortie that on flight radar, the ADS-B tracking software, all of them are effectively using the same stuff. It's ADS-B transponders.
Were those the 8 helicopters? About
7.
8 helicopters?
There's 7. So Mindy didn't pay attention. Okay. So there's 7 of them that go up. And one of the ones that you see coming back down is the LVMPD, which is N911WY. That is part of the group that seems to be coming back. She may have counted that. But what's interesting is Dog Walking Guy says, you guys see 7 of them on flight radar. He said, but half of them had their transponders turned off. I counted them. There were 14 helicopters that returned to Maverick. He said, so if you saw 7 of them, it's like a breadcrumb trail. It's like a tracer. That doesn't mean 7 of them took off. He said 14 helicopters returned to Maverick. And he said, I'm standing there like, what is going on?
And then about 10:25, I saw this convoy of helicopters start off, like they went, followed over the 95, and I could see them when they got, over the 15. They went over the 95 and spaced about half a mile apart, which is a lot tighter than these things usually fly. And they went up over the 95, and then they went south over Rainbow, took a left turn at Rainbow, and, flew down Rainbow. And the first 2 were Maverick 2 helicopters, and they flew over the 215 and took a left, between the 215 and Warm Springs, and went back to McCarran. The third was one of these attack helicopters, one of the killers, and it was about 2/3 the size of the Maverick 2 helicopters, if that tells you anything. And they went to the right. They took a right and went to the southwest, like they would have gone over the Walmart parking lot there at 215 and Rainbow.
And there's police cars flying around, but he can't hear the gunfire. He's just far enough away. He can't, but he sees the helicopter.
So he thinks there's something going militarily.
He can't imagine. The first thought is, are they filming a movie? But if they're filming a movie, how the hell are there police cars coming up from Henderson? They're coming from everywhere. He's like, it was insane what was happening. And then he sees balls of fire coming out of the sides of the helicopters, which are next to Mandalay Bay, but can't hear it. He just, but I see a ball of fire coming off the side of the helicopter. So that was his testimony.
In the same hotel as the shooter, where were you exactly when it happened?
Yeah, so I was in my room. I was about 2 floors and 1 room below him when everything started. So I was laying actually in my bed, and I first thought I heard fireworks, and I got up to look out at the concert because it sounded like it was coming from inside the room. So at that point, I wasn't sure what was going on, and when I heard the first 3 shots, I wasn't sure. After that, when it switched over to the automatic rifle, or whatever he had, I realized it was a gunner. At one point, I got up and I went over into the tub, just thinking maybe it was safer inside the tub there. So I stayed in there for a little bit, and then I got back up and I walked out towards the window to try to see if I could see anything going on. And I just saw cop cars everywhere, probably about 100, 200 of them swarming around Mandalay Bay and around the concert. And then helicopters started coming around the hotel. And they shone their lights right on, like right where I was standing, right on me, and they blinded me with their beams. 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 Walked away from the window because I wasn't sure, if I don't want them to mistake me as a shooter or anything. So I backed away from the window at that point. I went back on my bed at that point, and there's still more gunshots. There's still more gunshots. And there's still more gunshots. And then helicopters started coming around the hotel, and they shone their lights right on, like right where I was standing, right on me. And there's still more gunshots. And then helicopters started coming around the hotel, and they shone their lights right on, like right where I was standing, right on me, and they blinded me with their beams. So I walked away from the window because I wasn't sure. I went back on my bed at that point, and there's still more gunshots.
I was so unbelievably certain that it was coming from the helicopter because it was so close. And I remember thinking, why is it that close? Oh my God, I think the shooting is coming from the helicopter. Just in that moment was so certain, just not a doubt in my mind that there was shooting coming from the helicopter. But I do remember seeing they have those openings on the side, and I could see a shadow not facing facing out towards us. So not sitting back how you would in a helicopter strapped in. He was they were looking down at us. And it was I could see their heads, then underneath I could see a big blob, and I'm I couldn't tell what that was. And so I think that's another reason why I was really sure about it, because they were looking down on us. And I really wish I could remember every single detail with that night, but for some reason, I just knew it was coming out of that helicopter.
I put together testimony from about 13, 14, 15 different people who all believe that the shooting was coming from helicopters. And then recently, last October 1st, visited the venue and bumped into somebody and said to her, there's a lot of people who say that they thought that the shooters were in helicopters. And she said, that's exactly what I told my husband, that they were shooting at us from those helicopters.
Were you ladies here 5 years ago?
Yep.
You were?
Yep.
You know about the shooting and all that?
Here, John, stand a little closer.
You were there?
You were at the concert.
We were at the concert.
Thank goodness you're all right.
Yep.
And what do you think about the police and their findings? Do you think Stephen Paddock did all that shooting from that hotel room?
I really don't.
Did you know that a year after the police released body camera footage, and on multiple police body cameras, you can see that the window to the room isn't even broken?
Really?
At 10:30 at night?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
We spoke to a bunch of eyewitnesses who said that they believe that they were being fired at by helicopters.
That's what I thought.
You thought
You
helicopters?
thought that? Yeah.
What made you think?
Hang on.
No, she can't handle it. She
can't handle it.
She's very
Too emotional.
Yeah.
So-
I thought it was too.
all right.
That's what I called my husband. I told him.
Helicopters.
So there's a bunch of eyewitnesses that say they're shooting at us from the helicopters.
So not Maverick.
And a number of people in the documentary, which for me was like an answer key because it was a couple of years later. So I said, "Oh, this is great. Now I get to see what I got right and wrong."
Mm-hmm.
A number of people mentioned the attack from the air. They said they were getting rained down on.
Right. So to me, the minute you have an aerial attack, every discussion about Mary Lou Danley, Jesus Campos, it's irrelevant.
But it exists though, and so the question is, you still, I'm still having trouble connecting the helicopters and the ground level crazy.
Okay, so let me help you with that. So there's a huge piece of the puzzle that changes everything, and that is that there's no video evidence of gunfire coming from 32-135, but there is video evidence of gunfire coming from the little room next door, 32-134, that little adjoining room.
That's the little one that's a little more interior.
Right. So they had to blow the door to get in there and all that. Well, that room, we see the window get broken. We actually see the glass falling. So we've got two rooms and two windows that they show you broken the next day. That's the illusion. The illusion that the LVMPD and FBI present are those two broken windows the next morning. The challenge here is we have gunfire coming from the small room, 32-134, on camera, and the LVMPD tells us there's only 8 shots taken from that room. They tell us that in the FIT report. Only 8 shots were taken from that room. They were .308. They were taken from a bolt-action rifle, and they were taken at the tanks. 2 of them hit the tanks. 6 of them missed the tanks.
Right.
This is what the LVMPD tells us. Well, if that's the case, Well, then that means no one was killed from that room. If 8 shots were taken, 6 missed the tanks, 2 hit the tanks.
How do you miss a tank?
Well, this is where we're getting into what we call forged evidence, which is where the narrative and the actual physical evidence itself has been manipulated by the LVMPD. And this is why I want to press charges against McMahill, Lombardo, and the rest of the leadership there. But the Attorney General, Aaron Ford, doesn't seem to want to get involved. He doesn't like to get dirty. So
let me insert something I was heading towards, just because it's laughable. Last year, I returned to the story briefly because Lombardo became a congressman, governor,
right?
Governor, and Mike Kronk became a state senator.
Oh my God. Really?
Right.
I did not know that.
Right.
Okay. All right. That's interesting.
The other thing that's interesting is that they mentioned, again, this is where I think you and I might have been looking at different layers of the onion. Paddock's hard drive was missing. You knew that. ABC News dismissed that by listing about 5 other mass shooters whose hard drives were all missing.
That's all red.
And I go, I'm also supposed to feel better that all the mass shooters take out their. So well, again, except for the fact that it might mean that none of the shooters are legit shooters. None.
Well, again, you have to sort of roll everything back and say, wait a second. Right. The whole narrative and so many aspects of it are irrelevant based on my research, right? So, you're organic lithium and I'm kind of this, right? This is my baby. So the net of it is, if there's no gunfire coming from 32-135, and there are only 8 shots that came from that little room, and none of them killed anybody, well, then no one was killed from Mandalay Bay.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
All right. So now,
but why do you? So your narrative was that it was a hit from the helicopters and all up and down the strip too.
Okay.
Right. Shooters all up and down the strip.
Yes. Both on foot and in helicopters. Both on foot. And
I also inferred from something you said that they had to call an audible because they were trying to flush out the Crown Prince.
Well, that was the plan. Flushing them out is the plan.
They were going to blow up the tanks.
The tanks, right. So the audible was when the tanks don't go. So it looks like.
But then the question is, why do you need all these other? Were all these other crazy things all the audible? Were they all sort of after the fact?
The size of that blast had those actually gone off from the actual hits of those rounds. And again, those 223 or 5.56 rounds, 7.62 by 39 rounds. If there was an AK up there, I wouldn't be surprised if there was, or anything heavier. Had that tank have gone, this is Al Qaeda level destruction. I'm sure Jim will agree with me. The amount of planning here is what's absolutely baffling me.
But I know he had help. Do you agree?
That this is a very deeply planned and well orchestrated killing spree.
It was just over an hour ago when the sheriff said this about the possibility of him having help.
Creations.
All right, so let's think about who were the guys who were hanging off the sides of the helicopters with H&K G36 submachine guns or machine guns,
right?
Shooting women in the head, right? So who are these guys?
Repeatedly in the head.
Right. So who are they? Right. So it's a group of people, right? So, and in order to get to this, we had to look at who has helicopters. Who's got a bunch of helicopters that can show up?
Military.
Yeah, in Vegas. Well, it turns out that we've been selling helicopters to the Saudis, and they train just 263 miles as the crow flies from Vegas. And that's about the range of these helicopters, meaning you could fly to Kingman, Arizona, which is about, I don't know, what is it, like an hour's drive from Vegas, but to fly, it's minutes. They could refuel there very easily. So the net of it is there's a whole bunch of Saudi trainers in Mesa, Arizona at the Boeing Helicopter Company sitting on the tarmac. And we've been training their pilots in the United States for years. For years.
So in your opinion, the shooters were Saudis. Obviously, the people in the Boeing site know exactly what the hell happened because they
After the fact.
It couldn't have been.
After the
You think it
fact.
happened and then the Saudis came back and said, now you're going to shut your mouths?
No, I think what happened is you've got a bunch of Saudi pilots, right? You've got Saudi pilots that are training at Boeing and McDonnell Douglas Aircraft, which was across the street. McDonnell Douglas Helicopter was across the street. It since has been acquired by Boeing. And they're training in AH-6Is, they're training in Blackhawks, and they're training in Apaches, right? Everything they sell, the Saudis are buying. And the guys that they send over to train are the Saudi Arabian National Guard. Now, the Saudi Arabian National Guard is different from the Saudi Army in that this is the group that protects the royal family. It's the royal family's personal army, the Saudi Arabian National Guard.
From RedstoneAlabama.com, the Arsenal's Security Assistance Command works with many different countries to help build up their armed forces. One of those countries is Saudi Arabia. Jeff Martin explains tonight how the command is working to basically create a military for that country's royal family and doing so from scratch.
Over the past several years, a good portion of the billions of dollars in weapons bought by Saudi Arabia has come through the Redstone Arsenal-based U.S. Army Security Assistance Command. That unit actually has an office in Saudi Arabia where hundreds of Americans are training and building up the royal family's military, known as the Saudi National Guard.
Our mission is to provide train, advise, and assist, and also the foreign military sales aspect of fielding the equipment.
That's Major General Frank Muth, who heads the program office. He says the latest focus for his office has been on aviation.
As of 18 months ago, they had no aircraft, and now we have fielded the 1st Brigade.
The goal is for 3 of those brigades, which according to the program office will be used to protect the kingdom's borders and important areas like oil fields.
Aviation provides that flexibility and that speed and that range.
According to a 2010 announcement, the fleet will be made up of 72 UH-60M Blackhawk and 12 MD-530F utility helicopters, along with 24 AH-64E Apache and 36 AH-6I attack helicopters. But why is America helping to build the Saudi National Guard in the first place? According to the program office, building it up increases the strategic readiness of the American Army. You could read more about the program office's work at our website. For RedstoneAlabama.com, I'm Jeff Martin.
And the head of the Saudi Arabian National Guard is a guy named Maiteb bin Abdullah. Well, once upon a time, he thought he might actually be the next king of Saudi Arabia because his dad was King Abdullah. Maiteb bin Abdullah runs Saudi Arabian National Guard. He's kind of old school. We've got Mohammed bin Nayef, who is the head of Saudi intelligence or counterintelligence, and he wins the CIA award.
Check out these 2 Saudi princes. This one's the 57-year-old crown prince. And this one, the one doing all the hand kissing, is his younger cousin. Listen to what the older cousin is saying. He's being forced to give up his power and to pass the crown prince title to his younger cousin, a guy who's almost half his age. This is Mohammed bin Salman. In the West, we just call him MBS. And since this moment in June, he's consolidated power so swiftly and so thoroughly that in Saudi Arabia, they just know him as Mr. Everything. As Crown Prince, MBS will become king. And with all of this new power, MBS is seeking to assert his dominance throughout the Middle East. One of his big policies has been a vehement opposition to Saudi Arabia's neighbor, Iran. And on that note, he has found an ally in the White House. Inside the kingdom, MBS is also seeking to cement his authority and dominance over the royal family.
Saudi Arabia's young crown prince arresting hundreds of his own cousins and
crackdown on corruption. 11 princes and nearly 40 current or former officials detained, reportedly being held at the lavish Ritz-Carlton.
Yes, if you're a Saudi prince, jail is the Ritz-Carlton. MBS called this a corruption crackdown, and he branded himself as the financially responsible anti-corruption leader. But we're talking about a guy who recently purchased one of the most expensive homes in the world, and who last year spent $500 million on a painting. He clearly had other motives for this crackdown beyond fiscal responsibility. One thing to realize is that the Saudi royal family is made up of thousands of members who use public money generated from oil revenues to fund their unthinkably excessive lifestyles. So it wouldn't be hard for MBS to crack down on.
So you've got all these characters over there, and then you've got this article in The Guardian in 2015 where basically they say, you know what? This Mohammed bin Salman's 31 years old, and they're going to make him the crown prince. This is absurd.
Big problem.
Yeah, it's like, guys, you're not supposed to publish that. It's like you don't admit that you're going to plan a coup. You're supposed to keep that stuff a secret. But no, they published it in The Guardian and said, no, we're all talking about it and how we're going to do it and what we're going to do about it because this isn't going to work out. And I was like, this is remarkable. So there you have a motive. You've got a whole bunch of people in royalty, so basically the grandchildren, great-grandchildren of Ibn Saud, that are saying Mohammed bin Salman is 31. He can't wait till he's 61. We're all in our 70s, for God's sakes.
Welcome back. I am just back from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where I spent the last week. I witnessed what seems like the beginning of a revolution happening there. I was honored to interview the future king of Saudi Arabia, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, on stage at the kingdom's Future Investment Initiative conference. During our interview, His Royal Highness sent a message to the Saudi people and the world that he is leading a new vision in Saudi. While being interviewed by me, a symbol of freedom in my jacket and pants, not covered up, the country was buzzing about his remarks.
You have an incredibly beautiful country. You have the resources, but you are having radical ideas, some might say. Recently, you've announced that you will soon allow women to drive. You are allowing foreign investment in your beautiful country. Why now? What triggered this change in thinking?
You know, and Alwaleed bin Talal, the guy's single largest shareholder in Citibank, single largest shareholder in Twitter at the time. He's the wealthiest guy in Saudi Arabia. And he's going, I'm a direct descendant of Ibn Saud. And you're going to make the 31-year-old is going to be the king?
Which would take eternity for him to go through the wash and come out the other end, right?
So you've got a whole bunch of these.
And on that note, he has found an ally in the White House. Inside the kingdom, MBS is also seeking to cement his authority and dominance over the royal family.
Saudi Arabia's young crown prince arresting hundreds of his own cousins and
crackdown on corruption. 11 princes and nearly 40 current or former officials detained, reportedly being held at the lavish Ritz-Carlton.
Yes, if you're a Saudi prince, jail is the Ritz-Carlton. MBS called this a corruption crackdown, and he branded himself as the financially responsible anti-corruption leader. But we're talking about a guy who recently purchased one of the most expensive homes in the world, and who last year spent $500 million on a painting. He clearly had other motives for this crackdown beyond fiscal responsibility. One thing to realize is that the Saudi royal family is made up of thousands of members who use public money generated from oil revenues to fund their unthinkably excessive lifestyles. So it wouldn't be hard for MBS to crack down on anyone he wants to. MBS's second big move was to loosen the strict moral and social rules of the kingdom. He stripped the religious police of their right to make arrests. He expanded women's rights in society, including giving them the right to drive. On the surface, these are progressive social reforms meant to modernize Saudi society. But like the anti-corruption crackdowns, the move is another effort to seize power. Saudi society is built on a sort of pact between the royal family, which is called the House of Saud, and the vast religious establishment run by conservative Islamic clerics. The clerics give the Saud family legitimacy by giving them their blessing as rulers of the kingdom. In exchange, the family allows the clerics to strictly enforce their uncompromising, puritanical version of Islam within the kingdom. This Faustian bargain means that Saudi princes, like MBS and others, can live these indulgent lifestyles and make deals with the West, but still retain religious legitimacy in the eyes of the public. It's a balance that has kept the kingdom stable in this very volatile region. But now MBS has violated his family's part of the bargain, arresting hardline clerics who might speak out against his progressive reforms. This could shake one of the foundational pillars of Saudi society.
Predecessor to the primary religion of Saudi Arabia, a version of Islam called Wahhabism. ISIS also claims strong ties to Wahhabism. So what is Wahhabism and how does it affect this region? Wahhabism is a strict form of Sunni Islam named after its founder, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. He preached that all Muslims should strictly adhere to the Quran's teachings. Over time, Wahhabism has grown to have a domineering influence on Saudi Arabian religious culture and politics. In Saudi Arabia, Wahhabism is seen as the true interpretation of Islam. They also believe that anyone who does not practice their version of Islam are heretics. This teaching has been the cause of tension within the Islamic world because Wahhabism sees other followers of Islam, like Shias and Sufis, as non-believers, strongly encouraging followers to show no mercy to non-believers and issuing orders to kill anyone outside of the faith. And this isn't the first time that Wahhabism has been connected to a terror organization. Alongside ISIS, Wahhabi teachings have also heavily influenced Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. On the surface, it may seem like terror groups are adhering to the strict practice of Islam as a part of the religious crusade that allows them to justify violent action. However, there might be another reason why Wahhabism is being embraced by groups like ISIS. Experts believe that their ulterior motive might be financial. Wahhabism has its roots in Saudi Arabia, one of the richest countries in the world. It's understood that some Saudi charities and private companies are used as a front to fund extremist Wahhabi organizations like ISIS to the tune of $100 billion over the last 30 years.
older generation cousins of MBS.
But the Boeing guys, no, I get all this. What I
Okay.
don't get, so the Boeing guys must have known when these helicopters came back. By the way,
When
their
they came
Saudi
back.
buddies just
Yes.
shot the shit out of Vegas.
So the Boeing guys knew after the fact, but remember when it takes place? It takes place on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock. So if
Right.
these guys show up at the airfield at 7 p.m., at 6:30 p.m. in Mesa, Arizona on Sunday night and say, yeah, we're going to take the equipment out. We're going to go run a training mission. We're going to fly up there. Nobody's asking questions. These guys fly them every day. Nobody's asking them questions. It's their equipment. Nobody's
So do you
questioning
think
them.
you think they knew that once they hit the Crown Prince, that would being the plan,
Yeah.
that they would that would be known by the guys at Boeing so
Yeah.
so
It
they
was a
weren't
su-
going to try to hide it after the fact. They just had to pull it off, then get back. Now, so they were counting on the Boeing guys to shut the hell up.
I don't think the Boeing guys have a say in it. All right, so what happens at Boeing? And after the fact, the Boeing guys have got to be going, oh my God, what just happened here?
They shot up Vegas.
Right. Now, the FBI shows up at Boeing helicopter, but they've got a different story that they tell the public about. Now, why did the FBI show up at Boeing helicopter in Mesa, Arizona?
Because they knew in advance.
Because a guy named Doug Haig sold zirconium-tipped rounds to Stephen Paddock, supposedly. Doug Haig worked at Boeing helicopter in Mesa, Arizona. So the FBI tells the public, yeah, there's this really bad guy who makes ammunition and sold it to Stephen Paddock. We're going to go arrest him and investigate him. And so we're going to be out there. So if you see a bunch of FBI vehicles out at Boeing in Mesa, Arizona, it's because of this guy who makes ammunition. That was the cover story. Doug Haig.
So
yeah.
So Paddock, what I was able to dredge up is Paddock had affiliations with what's called Volant LLC. And Volant Associates LLC is an intelligence tied company. And I could never determine if they were the same thing. Paddock's brother works for something like Teradyne or something. Mary Lou gets sent abroad. Is all that just
Red
garbage
herring.
to
It's all
that's
red
all
herring.
just
red herring. Red herring.
pre-planned red herring or
Who's-
after the fact?
Well, it's interesting. So you kind of have to look at those press conferences that Lombardo
They
has.
change. They change.
Right, exactly. And so first he says, we got a lone gunman. It's 1:30 in the morning. We've got the guy. The guy is down. We engaged him, and he's currently dead. Okay. Then later that week, Lombardo is shaken up.
In the early throes of this tragedy, I had advised each and every one of you that items of information were going to change. The dynamics of this investigation is far-reaching, it's wide, it's huge, and you can't expect exact answers in the early throes. My intent in the early throes were to give you the information to provide that calmness in the community to ensure that we didn't have a second player or a third player out hiding in the community intending to cause us harm. So there was no integrity question associated with that, as I've experienced through the cyberspace, questioning my integrity. I provided you the information as I knew it, and everybody in here knew it was going to change. So we will get through that. I'm not giving you 100% satisfaction associated with what I'm going to give you today, because I think some of that's going to change. And we will not know that until we're completed with this investigation. So back to where we were. I think it's important for the community of Clark County to realize we use 17 separate medical facilities to accommodate the injuries associated with this event. And that speaks volumes for the medical community here in Las Vegas, in Clark County. And it seems to be lost in the narrative associated with this, that it was strictly a public safety, fire, and police event. No, it was including the medical community. And I think it's important for me to give them their due respect. So 17 separate medical facilities. Today's numbers, 546 reported injuries. 501 of those have been discharged. In other words, they responded to a medical facility, they were treated for their wounds, and subsequently left to seek a healing process wherever they chose to do so. 58 is still the number of individuals that have died. Now, this is the important piece. 45 individuals are still hospitalized. Some of those are in critical condition. So 58 may raise. By the grace of God, it doesn't. And we shall continue to move forward. The medical profession will provide all the medical care necessary, but sometimes it's people meet their demise outside of our control. So I'm hoping that number does not raise, but today's number is 58. The fuel tanks. I'm going to read this narrative so my words do not get changed, but I want to provide you some information in reference to the fuel tanks. It is believed the fuel tanks were fired upon with intent.
He shows up at a press conference, I think it's on Wednesday, and he has a hard time keeping his emotions in check. You can tell he's choked up.
I saw that. He's
choked up, something's up. And I think I know what happened right before that press conference. Aaron Rouse is the special agent in charge in Las Vegas. Aaron Rouse used to be the FBI's head of counterintelligence. He is the special agent in charge of Las Vegas, Aaron Rouse, formerly the FBI's head of counterintelligence. Aaron Rouse shows up the night of the shooting. Aaron Rouse is there at 1:30 in the morning, standing right behind Lombardo. Lombardo tells you, we got the guy, lone gunman up in the hotel. We got the guy. And I'm watching this and going, I watched the footage and I'm watching it live, right? It's 1:30 in the morning in Las Vegas, but at the time I was living in Thailand. It was 3:30 in the afternoon or something. I'm watching this thing unfold. And I'm saying, what? How do you know it's a lone gunman? You guys got up to the top of the Excalibur?
They always do that.
You got to the rooftops of all those hotels around the venue? How'd you get up there so quick to all the tops of all the Tropicana? You search the roof of the Tropicana for brass casings at 1 in the morning and you're done already? That's remarkable. How'd you guys do that? So I wasn't buying that at all. And I started to look at footage, and that's when I started to realize it was an aerial attack, because you see these helicopters flying the wrong way, flying where there's nothing on flight radar, meaning they have...
See, I totally missed the aerial attack completely. So that never hit my radar until
that changes
it
everything.
must have been a year later. Now
That
I knew
changes
something
everything.
was all screwed up, but it was all, for me, it was all ground level screwed up. It was all the red herring screwed up. And
So this is why the documentary that Mindy put together kind of wastes a lot of time, because she talks about like the guy from Australia who doesn't know what room he's staying in. Who cares? There's a guy from Australia who doesn't know what room he's staying in. To me, that's like a moron. So that's not a story. So to me, you have to think of this again. You kind of have to start at the beginning and say, so wait a second. If this was the case and these were commandos coming from helicopter training school in Arizona, flying up there with a bevy of helicopters, 3, 4, 5, 6 helicopters, pulling this thing off, they thought they were going to die. So that's the first thing you have to kind of accept, is the guys who signed up to kill the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia knew that there's a pretty good chance they're going to die. That's the first thing. All right, so they're all accepting that they're probably going to get killed, and if the mission fails, they will certainly be beheaded. All right, there's no doubt they will be beheaded if they failed. If they fail,
and it failed,
and
right?
it failed, and MBS supposedly prosecuted a whole bunch of really bad men who killed Jamal Khashoggi, didn't he?
Oh, so I wrote about Jamal Khashoggi, and in no way was successful at connecting him with Vegas. I knew that the Khashoggi story was all screwed up. I actually nicknamed him ODK. I called him One Dead Khashoggi, and I was squealing relentlessly about why the hell do we care that some guy got fed to the camels over in Saudi Arabia. I don't care. What is all the noise about Khashoggi? I never successfully picked up on Khashoggi's role.
Well, and the role is based on his connections. Khashoggi used to work for Al Walid bin Talal, a joint venture with like Fox or something that Al Walid was the head of, and Jamal Khashoggi was the number 2 guy. Jamal Khashoggi was also number 2 or number 3 at the GIP, the Saudi General Intelligence Presidency, is their version of our CIA.
Hi everyone, today we have a very important guest with us, Jamal Khashoggi, the very prominent Saudi journalist. Welcome, Mr. Jamal, how are you?
Ahlan wa sahlan, thank you for having me here. But he is also maintaining the old ways of repressive system. Actually, he's expanding at that. And he's totally, he doesn't need it. There is no opposition to him. I just don't understand, why does he have to go? By embracing Arab Spring, respecting people's wishes in change and democracy.
And so Khashoggi was like the number 2 or number 3 guy over there. He was one of the head intelligence people. So calling him a journalist, when it's like calling Peter Strzok a journalist or Christopher Wray a journalist. It's like, I don't think Christopher Wray is a journalist, but that's how they refer to
or Maxwell, a journalist.
Yeah, exactly. So now what happens is Jamal Khashoggi was assassinated or killed October 2nd, 2018 in Turkey at 8 o'clock in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning, October 2nd in Turkey is 10 p.m. in Las Vegas.
So it was a simultaneous hit of Khashoggi and, in theory, the Crown Prince.
No. Khashoggi is killed on the 1-year anniversary
of
the Vegas shooting.
Okay.
MBS is very poetic. And he's one of these eye for an eye kind of guys.
That's like taking out the Kerch Bridge on Putin's birthday.
Exactly. So this was his appointment at the Turkish embassy was at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
That's 10 p.m. Las Vegas time, the day before.
So it was to commemorate it.
It's 1 year ago. And now we're going to introduce you. We're going to introduce you to the deli slicer, and we're going to cut you up into pieces, and we're going to film it, and I'm going to show it to the cousins at the next get together, and I'm going to explain.
I didn't know that part. I didn't know that part at all.
So his connections to Al-Walid bin Talal, to the other heads of the GIP, the General Intelligence Presidency, which Mansour bin Mukran's father, Mukran bin Abdulaziz, was the head of the GIP. Again, you got Mukran bin Abdulaziz, Maiteb bin Abdullah, Mohammed bin Nayef. Well, Mansour bin Mukran, the son of Mukran bin Abdulaziz, I believe is the guy who wrote the article for The Guardian in 2015 saying this is what's happening and all the elders are pissed off. His father, Mukran bin Abdulaziz, had been crown prince and was pushed aside.
One of Salman's first actions has been to immediately appoint his half-brother Mukrin as his crown prince and heir. The rapid move is aimed at warding off fears of a succession crisis at a moment when Saudi Arabia faces unprecedented turmoil on its borders.
And Mansour's going, what are you talking about? My dad was going to be the king, which means I was going to be the crown prince,
right? Yeah.
And now this 31-year-old is pushing my dad out of the picture? That means you just pushed me out of the picture.
So the motive is very clear. Now I got that part from one of your pods.
So November 5th is the night of the long sword. An invitation goes out from King Salman to come to the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh, and you're going to be entertained by Shakira.
We drive in under police escort just past midnight. No one enters here now without official permission. The world's most talked about hotel. Riyadh's most palatial, most prestigious. Now a gilded prison. I'm taken in by Saudi officials, told don't film faces, don't record conversations. Here in the early hours of the morning, there's still people in the lobby drinking coffee, as you'd find in any of the five-star hotels here in the capital. Most of the people who have now been forced to stay here are keeping to themselves, trying to limit any further damage to their reputation. Their mobile phones have been taken away from them, but there is a hotline that's available to them. They can call their lawyers, family members, even leading members of the companies they're still trying to keep running. The world's most pampered prisoners have every comfort except freedom. The state is picking up this bill. As far as detention centers go, this one is beyond compare. Luxury swimming pool, restaurants, a gym, everything is glittering. There's even a bowling alley, but most prisoners just stay in their rooms. I'm taken to meet one suspect. He doesn't give me his name. Says he spends his time with his lawyer, focusing on his case. I'm told not to ask about it. But I get a briefing. Senior officials conducting this crackdown say it's not a formal investigation yet. They call it a friendly process, but it's clearly fraught. We're being told that when people were brought here around midnight on November the 4th, they were understandably angry. Some of them thought this would just be a show and it wouldn't last. And then when they realized they were here to stay, they were furious. Almost everyone here, 95% I was told, are willing to make a deal to give back what are said to be substantial sums of money in order to get out of here. The Crown Prince, 32 years old, is taking on fellow princes, senior ministers, some of the biggest billionaires, tackling corruption, concentrating power. Weeks on, many are still asking questions about why this purge happened here and now. Outside this Gildan prison, it certainly has gone down well. Many Saudis welcome an end to the rampant corruption in the kingdom. But there are risks too. The ambitious Crown Prince risks creating enemies and uncertainty, which could endanger the very stability and reforms, his kingdom so badly needs.
It was either Shakira or Ciara. I can't tell the difference. I'm semi-dyslexic. So it was either Shakira or Ciara was going to be entertainment, big party, November 5th, Ritz-Carlton, Riyadh. And then they locked the doors. And Blackwater's there.
When you say Blackwater, a group from Blackwater?
Blackwater, yeah.
How many? How many? How many?
Enough that Al-Walid bin Talal didn't leave for months and lost a lot of weight. He lost a lot of weight. Yeah, I'll bet the bottoms of his feet are nice and tender now. So they got this technique with the garden hose that's very effective. So they get billions from these guys. They're all billionaires. Every one of them, they got mega yachts, these ultra luxury yachts. They're billionaires, every one of them. Mohammed bin Nayef is a billionaire. And MBS shakes them down and says, I know what you did, but you're Assad. So you're going to give me half your money. You're going to sign this. And you're never going to do it again. A year later, he's got the footage of Jamal Khashoggi being sliced up. Jamal Khashoggi's not Assad. Any questions? You guys want to play? If you want to keep doing this, we're going to bring out the deli slicer again, and we're just going to go slice.
So how did Khashoggi get killed? Is that a metaphor or was?
Yeah, I mean they chopped him up. But what would I do? Right?
I knew they chopped him up, and I refer to it as feeding him to the camels.
Yeah, no.
But
so he's in a conference room. They tape him to the chair, and what would I do if I'm filming it and I want to make an impression on my cousins?
One piece at a time.
Yeah, I'm going to cut here. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to cut here, here, and here, here, right? I'm just going to work it.
Right.
And make them scream and blood all over the place. And I want the cousins terrified.
You bet.
I want this to stop because the chances are I've got the recordings of Jamal Khashoggi because I own everything the CIA owns.
And of course, some very powerful surveillance tech.
And what we enable is to actually intercept phone calls, gather intelligence in order to prevent, hopefully, terror attacks.
So you have this rucksack in this box, and you can put it down in a location, in a crowd at a protest, for instance, something like that, and it can intercept 30 phone calls simultaneously within that radius.
This small box. So if you're in a crowded city, such as Paris, for example, you can be getting thousands of calls an hour.
I guess, when you're intercepting that many calls, you must be intercepting lots of people you don't want to, lots of innocent people just going about using their phones. So how do you make sure that you don't get the wrong people on the call?
Well, the thing is, what we would recommend doing is mass interception. Of course, we don't want to invade anybody's privacy. But at the end of the day, the problem is that you can never know what cell phone the criminals will be using.
Another stand was selling a piece of kit that could rip a huge amount of data off phones that had their Wi-Fi switched on.
So it's like a Facebook profile that you've put in front of me. It's like photos, it's passwords, details about his phone, his device, his carrier, his country, his address, his web history. Is there a concern that innocent people may be caught up in that process?
You know, we sell a car. How you drive it, it's your responsibility.
I buy all the same crap from Israel that they buy. I can listen to any cell phone. I got Pegasus. He's got everything. He hacked Jeff Bezos's cell phone and got Jeff Bezos's photos with Lauren Sanchez. That was MBS who did that. Okay? Because Jeff Bezos was harboring Jamal Khashoggi.
Oh, God.
Okay, so he hacks into Bezos's phone, leaks the Lauren Sanchez thing. Bezos ends up getting divorced, costs him $60-80 billion to break up with Mackenzie, right? And Jamal Khashoggi is chopped to bits on the 1-year anniversary to the hour. 1 year. Now, Mansour bin Mukran, the son of Mukran bin Abdulaziz, never makes it to the Riyadh, never makes it to the Ritz-Carlton. He and his entourage are shot out of the sky in their helicopter.
Subtle.
Eye for an eye. Everybody else we're going to beat and take your money. But this little bastard, he's not going to make it to the party. He's not going to make it. And they took out the whole entourage. I think, he's got a big helicopter. Took them all out.
So did authorities in the U.S. know the Vegas shooting was going to take place in advance? Certainly.
No. If you don't speak Arabic, you didn't know anything about this. Is Al-Qaeda inside of the Sang. You've got, the Sang is 250,000 men. Okay? 250,000 men protect the royals. That is not the army.
Wow.
Kind of makes those guys with the funny hats. Who are those funny hat guys in the UK, right? The guys with the big furry hats. Kind of makes them look silly. You got 250,000 commandos.
That's the big Praetorian Guard right there.
It's unreal. And they report to the king. And that's who, right? Now, the guy who's running that operation knows full well what the exfiltration protocols are. In what scenario do we have to grab the crown prince and his wife and kids and say, sir, we need to leave the building now?
Right.
Under what? Well, they know.
Blowing up a tank. Blowing up the tank.
Blowing up the tanks, and if that doesn't work, well, then we need bedlam. We need complete bedlam outside.
Right.
So for a bunch of Al-Qaeda guys, shooting women in cowboy boots and hot pants. These are Sharia guys. Yeah, they're Wahhabis.
That's sport.
These are Wahhabis.
That's sport.
So
Yeah,
to
that's
them,
sport.
these
That's
are
morally
heathens.
sound. Yeah.
They're doing God's work.
So how did they miss him? How did they miss him?
So you've got a couple different attacks, and this is where you start to understand, okay, so what was the role of Stephen Paddock? Stephen Paddock had 3 women checked into the room with him.
We're going to really learn a lot more about what happened in Vegas once we learn the identities of these 3 women.
All right. Okay, so room 135 on the 32nd floor, registered guest, his last name is Paddock. On the 32nd floor. That's where they believe the shooting's coming from. The guest name's Paddock, Paddock. OCK. First name Steven with a PH. And he's registered there with 3 other females. I don't know, you want all their names. Are you there? Yeah, there's 3 other females staying there with him. I don't know if they have anyone on that floor yet. Last I heard, SWAT was on the 31st floor. I don't know if they're making that up. No, security say that's where the shooting's coming from. Yep. Hold on. Are you there? They have a unique checkout date. They checked in on the 25th, and they're checking out on October 2nd.
October 1, 2017, 23 hours and 57 seconds.
I've got a couple units up in the control room, and they're briefing that on the 32nd floor, room 135, possible suspect ID is going to be last name Easy, Adam, David, Ocean, Charlie, King. First name Stephen with a PH. That's who the room is registered to. Break. There's also 3 females that are registered to that room. First name is Joanne, Joanne. Last name. Second subject, Laura. Last name. Third subject, Katie. Last name. They checked in on 25 September. Scheduled to check out on October 2nd.
Joanne, Katie, and Laura. And the room keys are all over the counter. We see them sitting. There's 5 room keys sitting on the counter. I never checked into a hotel room and asked for 5 room keys. And I certainly never hired a prostitute and asked her to give her ID at the front so she could get a room. Nobody does that. Nobody registers prostitutes to the room. Nobody does that. He has 3 women registered to the room, which means he knew them. And there were 2 vehicles there with him. Mary Lou is in the Philippines, but some chick is running around flashing her card. It's one of those 3 chicks. He's got Joanne, Katie, and Laura staying in the room with him. We see women's clothing in the room.
Was Paddock an arms dealer?
No.
That's what I thought.
No. It's it's Occam's razor stuff. I shoot, and I shoot a lot. Okay, I shoot long distance stuff, right?
Right.
And I own a fair number of guns, but not a crazy number of guns. But if you said to me, John, I'd love to go out in the desert and shoot some stuff. And if you could teach me how to shoot something that's a quarter of a mile away, that would be amazing. And I can do that. I can teach you how to do that, right? It would take us about an hour, hour and a half. And I could have you hitting something at a quarter of a mile away pretty much 8 out of 10 times. And then you could say to me, if I wanted to buy this gun, could you sell it to me? And the answer is yes. If you're not a felon, it's perfectly legal for me to sell you my guns privately. Now, if I had 20 guns...
That's still true? Is that still true?
Absolutely. As long as you're not a felon. Private gun sales are perfectly legal. By the way, as is bringing your guns into a hotel room is perfectly legal. When I travel...
23 is nuts.
So hang on, though. But you got to think, where did he think he was going the next day?
The desert. The desert.
Why does he have a minivan with him? He's got a minivan and a Kia something, Kia Sonata, Sonoma, whatever it was, a Tucson, Hyundai Tucson, whatever the hell it was. There were 2 vehicles there, a minivan and another one. Well, he's got 3 women with him, registered to the room. And he's got 24 guns and tannerite. You know what tannerite does, right? You take out in the desert, you put some tannerite like in a watermelon, and it blows up. It explodes when you shoot it.
It's that Jif bottle. Watch
that. Wow. So it's a contact explosive?
Exactly. It's a 2-part.
Okay.
You mix the 2 powders, you put it out there, but it has to be hit by a projectile that's going faster than the speed of sound. If it's not supersonic, it won't ignite. It won't blow. Yeah, well, this stuff is pretty powerful. There's some videos on YouTube of people taking like 100 pounds of tannerite and blowing up an entire building.
What we've got here is 164 pounds of tannerite in a Rubbermaid tub. Bench ready now, but the tannerite will be sitting on the bucket underneath these main beams of the barn.
With 100 pounds. It's powerful stuff. He has tannerite, he's got 24 weapons, and he's got a minivan, and he's got 3 women with him. Well, let's see. If that were me, it tells me I'm planning to take a bunch of guys out to the desert the next day shooting, And they're probably a bunch of high rollers. They're probably a bunch of Middle Eastern guys with McLarens and Ferraris and Lamborghinis, or at least that's what the girls told me.
Got our machine gun inbound right there.
There we go.
Coming in hot. So
what type of guns are on board?
we got an M60 E6. So
And what's that for the novice like me who knows nothing about guns?
kind of like Vietnam, Navy SEAL era, shoot from the hip, Rambo type of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Good. There you go. Getting education today. All right, you ready? Just don't touch the barrel because it's super hot.
Okay.
When you're ready, yeah.
All right, you guys ready?
Yeah. Yeah, it climbs a little bit.
I was trying to hit everything I shot there.
I think you got some of the
Yeah.
And the girls told me that these guys are willing to pay 10 grand a rifle. And I got 24 of them. So this is $250,000 outing for me. And I'm going to take them out in the minivan out to the desert. We're going to blow some stuff up. And then this guy's going to say, I really like this one. And that's going to say, oh, I want to buy that one. And this guy's going to buy these two. And at $10,000, $20,000 a rifle, these guys throw cash around. They don't care. To them, that's just, that's how much they tip when they go out at night.
Right.
So that's what I think he thought was happening. He was set up by the women. He was honeypotted.
Right.
And when there's a knock on the door and the guys who they're meeting, they're going to have some drinks, go out for dinner before the next day they go shooting. They'll come up to the suite. He opens the door. Hey, I'm Steven. Great to meet you. Bang. Steven's dead.
So he got the first bullet.
He's the first one to die. Now we've got
In fact, I think he was cold, right? I mean, I think he died well in advance.
And he's blanched. And the guys look at him and they go, this guy's been dead for, this guy's been dead for a while. Like, this guy didn't just die. So, they know what a dead body was. This guy's been lying there since, 4 PM or something,
Blood pooling in his ass, right?
Yeah. All right.
Blood pooling in his ass, right?
But there's more to this. So hang on. So now the guys come in. Hey, I'm Steven. Looking forward tomorrow. Go out to the desert. Going to have a great time. Bang. He's dead. These are commandos. These are Sang, Al-Qaeda. They're here to kill the Crown Prince. They want to get upstairs, and this lovely 6'4" white guy just provided us with an entire arsenal.
There's a whole suitcase full of load AK, Max.
It was definitely AK fully automatic.
There's a whole suitcase full of load AK, Max.
It was definitely AK fully automatic.
There's a whole suitcase full of load AK, Max.
It was definitely AK fully automatic.
There's a whole suitcase full of load AK, Max.
Grab what you want. You want an AR-15 now. Turns out there's a whole suitcase of AK-47 magazines. but there's no AK-47s in the inventory. Why would you bring a whole suitcase of AK-47 magazines?
Good question.
If you don't have any AK-47s.
So they took what they took what they needed, and left the rest.
And they took what they're familiar with. They took the AKs and left the ARs. They don't shoot ARs. Right. They all like AKs. And they took the AK stuff and they went up the stairwell, because 3 floors up from Paddock's room is the Four Seasons. And the Four Seasons is owned by Al-Walid bin Talal. Al-Walid bin Talal says to MBS, his cousin, my cousin, salam alaikum, I want you to spend Ashura with your wife and children in my presidential suite at the Four Seasons. Right? I own it, right? He owns 45% of the Four Seasons. And he says to MBS, I insist. It's a gift. I want you to bring the whole entourage. In fact, I'll give you the whole wing of the hotel. You take the whole thing, 35 up to 40. Take the whole thing. Bring the family, because Ashura is the Muslim equivalent to Passover. It's when they tell the story of Exodus, because Muslims and Jews both celebrate and study the Old Testament.
All right, Moses. I know you. What's this really about?
Ramesses, look. What do you see?
A greater Egypt than that of my father.
That is not what I see.
Moses, I cannot change what you see. I have to maintain the ancient traditions. I bear the weight of my father's crown.
Do you still not understand what Seti was?
He was a great leader.
His hands bore the blood of thousands of children.
Slaves.
My people. And I can no longer hide in the desert while they suffer. At your hands.
So, you have returned, only to free them.
And so the story of Exodus is in both religions, but the Jews call it Passover, Muslims call it Ashura. Ashura was October 1st, 2017. It's the story of Exodus. So telling the story to the kids with a pyramid out the window?
Right.
I insist.
I heard that part, right?
We've got a sphinx. We've got a pyramid. The kids, come on. It doesn't get any better than that. I insist, MBS, you take the Four Seasons. Bring the whole family. Bring the entourage. It's a gift from me.